Bodyweight squats. Squats are a fantastic exercise. They're one of our fundamental foundational exercises because they use the entire body and they train us to be better prepared to take on activities that we deal with on a daily basis. As simple as sitting down and getting out, which sounds super easy, right? But you notice as we get older, that kind of thing gets harder. You'll notice people having to use the edges of their chair to stand up, holding on to something to sit down. So that basic exercise of just sitting and standing is fundamental to how we live our lives. It impacts everything. So a squat is, like I said, a foundational exercise. We start with body weight squats because before we want to add weight to anything, we want to make sure that our form is really, really clean. Besides, body weight work does not have to be easy. Just because you're not holding an extra weight doesn't mean the exercise is simple, doesn't mean the exercise is easy. So we're going to start with basically what's called a prisoner squat. Slide the goblet out of the way, we don't need that quite yet. So for a prisoner squat, it's called that because your hands are up. So you're going to take your hands, fingers right behind your head, elbows out. The reason we're doing this is going to help us keep our chest lifted rather than dropping forward. We want to keep that chest nice and tall. You can take your feet a little bit wider than hip distance apart. It's going to take a little bit of play to find where that placement is for you, but a little wider than hip distance. And toes can either be directly forward or slightly turned out. Really depends on your anatomy as to which way is going to feel more natural. Try them both on. Whichever one you do, you want knees going right over your toes. So rather than letting the knees drop in, which is really common, you want those knees to go straight forward, even pressing ever so slightly out. I have short Achilles tendons. This pose feels better for me with my toes slightly turned out. It gives me more range of motion in my hips. Like I said, try both on, see what works for you. I'm going to take hands just behind the head, taking the foot placement of your choosing, knees going right over your toes, chest stays lifted. Hips are going to drive back. You squat as low as you can. Drive your heels into the mat, come straight back up. Squeeze at the top. Lower down, drive heels into the mat, squeeze when we get to the top. Side, so this is a little hard to see from a front on angle. Hips are going to go straight back, stays nice and lifted. Drive up, squeeze. Lower down, hips drive back, chest stays lifted. Back up, squeeze. You hear me say again and again, slower is better. Doing these things really quickly can lead to power, but for most of us, what it's going to actually lead to is we start to get a little sloppy, not pay attention to our form, and we start having those issues like knees rolling in. If you find that you are very, very prone to those knees knocking in when you're doing your squats, one way to train yourself out of that, get a band. Any kind of band will do. You're going to put your band up around your legs. Doesn't have to be a super thick one for this. We're using it mostly for a reminder more than we are for actual strength here. So again, you find your foot placement. Everything else is exactly the same, but as you're pushing down, that band is trying to make your legs squeeze in. So as you go down, you're really pushing out against the band before you come back up. So it's going to train these muscles. It's going to wake them up into the exercise and get you much more used to keeping those knees nice and wide as you do your squats.